there's a lot of discussion about how social media can be reformed, maybe some regulations to ensure that some of the more toxic disinformation doesn't get spread so rapidly. Well, Mark Zuckerberg claims that he has a solution for that. The good news is, even though most lawmakers, both Democrats and Republicans, seem to be pretty incompetent in anything regarding the internet, they've pushed back against what he is proposing here. So let's get to the details. Zuckerberg proposed that Congress require online platforms to have a system to identify and take down certain illegal content and revoke key liability protections if they don't. The decades-old legal shield known as Section 230 protects digital platforms from lawsuits over how they police user content and what material they host on their services. So, I mean, look, this is like a pharmaceutical company that was slanging opioids, suggesting how we can regulate pharmaceutical drugs. I mean, come on. So I like that lawmakers overall pushed back against this, because what Mark Zuckerberg is essentially calling for is putting a system in place that allows him to monopolize this space even more than he already has. Because if you're a startup, you're not gonna have the resources to police the content on your platform the way that Facebook can. So let's start with the response from Senator Ron Wyden, who actually played a role in writing the legislation in question here, Section 230. He says Mark Zuckerberg knows that rolling back Section 230 will cement Facebook's position as the dominant social media company and make it vastly harder for new startups to challenge his cash cow. Even Trump loyalist Marsha Blackburn is against this. And remember, Trump was very much in favor of repealing Section 230. Marsha Blackburn says this: Section 230 reform will hit Facebook regardless of what these self-interested Silicon Valley CEOs want. Big tech only wants reform when it bolsters their power at the expense of competitors. But to be honest with you, the best point was made by Representative Tom Malinowski, who seems to understand what the heart of the issue really is here. He says that is a classic example of Facebook hoping that we miss the point. They want us to focus on putting out fires and not on the fact that their product is flammable. So you might argue that that statement is a little vague, but I think what he's referring to is how bad behavior gets rewarded on these platforms. They want people to be engaged on these platforms as long as possible, and they reward that engagement by featuring the content and in other ways, right? So what they do is they allow inflammatory content, content that intentionally, purposefully picks fights with other people, leads to conflict. That's what they do, fake news. The way these algorithms are set up, I think, is the real issue here.
Yeah, well, look, I think this is another complicated issue. Some parts of it are clear, some parts of it are not. So, number one, on Section 230, we have to keep it. If they get rid of Section 230, it's a disaster for everyone who's in the grassroots populace across the entire spectrum, because it allows the giant corporations that have the resources to do some of that regulation. First of all, he wants to craft a law so it is perfectly advantageous for Facebook. Right. That's why both Republican and Democratic senators are calling him out on it. But even beyond that, if they get rid of Section 230, as the idiot Donald Trump wanted, well, nobody could afford to do what Facebook does, so it would wipe out Breitbart and Alternet and you name it. Everything on the left and the right that isn't like basically $1 billion company would get wiped out. So that is a disaster. And even if you're a Trump fan, you want your own websites to get wiped out and you can't read any of them, you can't watch any of them. It doesn't make any sense. So that's part of it. In terms of what they actually should do, they should, instead of spending a lot of money on these issues, they should spend a lot of money to investigate fraud on their own platforms, right? So Twitter is filled to the rim with bots. Trolls are different. Trolls are, they want to have fun. They don't care. They're this, they're that. They're hateful. They want to get under your skin, like they're real people. Yeah, if you're a real person and you're a troll, okay, I mean, Donald Trump's a troll, right? There's Matt Gaetz is a troll. There's tons of trolls, right? They're politicians. But the bots are fake, right? And Twitter's filled with bots, let alone the troll farms, which are inorganic, not real people. It's folks who are hired to pretend to be enraged by things. Is Twitter going to regulate that? It is totally out of control on their platform.
Right.
Not at all, right? Now, Facebook. Judd Legum did a terrific story about how Ben Shapiro's network on Facebook is clearly breaking the rules. And what's Facebook doing about it? No, they still, by breaking the rules, they continue to have the top content every day. It's brazen. It's brazen.
It's insane.
And Facebook goes, rules for progressives and Democrats and independents, but no rules for our brothers that are right wing. Almost the whole board is Republican. Look, I don't know. And by the way, their policy group is for Facebook is definitely Republican. So I don't know if it's because they are Republican, so they like Republican talking points about not taxing the rich, not taxing corporations, deregulation, etc. Or if they're scared of the Republicans, or both, right? But the fact that they're letting Republicans manipulate the platform is indisputable.
I mean, look, one final point for me, because it's relevant to this story. Not too long ago, I think it was last week, we covered a story regarding a right-wing marketing firm that was putting out advertisements that made it appear as though this was a socialist organization, and it was encouraging Democratic voters, specifically those who are further to the left, to vote for a third party. It was a right-wing marketing firm encouraging Democratic voters to vote for a third party. This is before the 2018 midterm elections happened. So what happened? I mean, Facebook couldn't even handle that. In fact, what was happening in that particular case broke FEC laws. That was illegal material, right? Because there are certain campaign or election laws, I should say, that need to be followed. But they seemed to know that there was an issue there, and they didn't do anything about it for a while.
Yeah, and one last thing for me as to why it's complicated is that don't fall into any of these camps where you're like, okay, now all big tech is terrible and we should shut it down. Big tech is wonderful and heavenly and they should get whatever they want. No, you got to use your judgment to make a decision. So for the one great upside of those tech companies is they open the gates. And so now that, yes, that let in some very bad actors, but it also let in a lot of good actors, right? Both principled progressives, which had no outlet before big tech, and mainstream media despises progressives. Also, they don't, like the right wing think that mainstream media doesn't like the right wing, and I understand why they think that, but they air right wing points all the time.
Yeah.
Progressives get nothing, total wall of silence embargo, right? But either way, there are real right wingers and real left wingers that got to voice their opinions because of these platforms that they wouldn't have otherwise done. And they got to set up blog posts and websites and video channels, etc. I'm living proof of it. Mainstream media does not want anything but corporate messages. And when I didn't do that, we had issues at MSNBC. And I don't want to go back to the bad old days where multi-billion-dollar corporations with an iron fist decide what goes on air and what doesn't, as mainstream media does. Big tech we shouldn't say, okay, I'll burn down their house to get rid of them, etc., because then we're going to go back to the days that were even worse, right? But we do have to do reasonable regulation to make sure that they're not allowing rampant fraud. It isn't about ideology. I would never want them to take down just right-wing ideology, no matter how much I hate it, okay? But if you're doing threats of violence or you're doing fraud, these are actually actionable things.
Yes.
Not I disagree with you, but hey, you're a danger to that specific person, or you're obviously cheating and violating all of our rules. So, but remember too, guys, as you get mad at big tech, no matter where you're on the spectrum, once the gatekeepers are gone, progressives were allowed in for the first time ever. So that's why it is a complicated and interesting issue that we need to use our judgment on. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.